Hello and welcome to this episode of the REBT Advocates with Dr. Michael R. Adelstein of 3minutetherapy.com. You can find his book, 3-Minute Therapy, Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life at therebt.life. And me, Tommy Bateman, counselor extraordinaire of Richmond, Virginia area, the great Richmond area. And you can find us both. You can contact us both at rebtadvocates@gmail.com. Today, we're going to go in a similar vein as the last episode. Michael, take it away. What do we got going on?
Oh, today we have a gracious volunteer and an REBT advocate, Anne. So let's get right to it. Okay, Anne, what would you like to discuss?
Hi. I would like to discuss an issue that I've recently been struggling with, which is my weight. And so it's getting like I was overweight before, and I lost like 30 pounds, but I'm still not where I want to be. And I'm having a difficult time finding motivation, to like jumpstart that. So I'm not really sure like how to go about it. I feel stuck.
Okay, very good. That's a good thing for REBT. And for our new viewers, REBT is Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, devised many years ago by Albert Ellis and changed the course of the therapy movement. Okay, and the first step in working on a problem is using the problem separation technique. And what that says is as we go through life and as we go through the day, we have various problems we're trying to solve, but sometimes we escalate solving these problems into emotional problems. We get anxious, depressed, guilty, those kinds of things. So it's important to start with one of those, the emotional problem or the practical problem. So let's ask you, in not losing weight, would you say you have a practical problem, and that is you can learn better practical strategies for losing weight? The question is, do you also have an emotional problem? Do you feel anxious, guilty, depressed, procrastinating, hopeless, any of those on top of the practical problem?
Yes.
Yeah, and which ones?
For sure. The like the guilt, feeling guilty about like not doing anything about being healthy, so the guilt part, I'm anxious about it. And then that leads to like being depressed about it. So
Right. Okay, so we've identified both practical and emotional problems, and REBT helps with both. So the question is, would you like to start with the emotional and looking at your guilt and depression, hopelessness about it, or would you like to start with some practical strategies? What would work best for you?
let's go with the emotional piece.
Okay. And what of these emotions that you mentioned would you say is most prominent, if there is one?
Hopeless.
Hopeless?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we can start with hopeless. Now, as us REBTers know, if you have an emotion, it doesn't come from the situation of failing to lose weight. Rather, it comes from your thinking about the situation. And normally, the kind of thinking that leads to emotional disturbance, like depression, hopelessness, guilt, those things, is characterized by demands. Must, should, supposed tos, have tos, demands you put on yourself, others, or situations. So when you think about that you haven't lost weight, you'd like to get healthier, you have this goal, and you haven't succeeded yet, what do you tell yourself right before you feel hopeless? That begins with, I must, or I should, or I must not, or my weight must, or my health must, or must not something. How would you finish it?
It would be, I must be thinner. I must lose weight fast. I shouldn't be this big.
Okay, very good. I must lose weight, be this fat. So as you can see that your goals make sense, your preferences make sense. You prefer to lose weight and you prefer not to be as heavy as you are. So those are reasonable goals and they tend to be motivating unless you squelch them by escalating them into demands, musts and shoulds. And when you have demands like that, they tend to lead to global evaluations. I must lose weight, and because I haven't, this proves I'm hopeless. So I think we have a pretty full accounting of that irrational belief. And one of the main reasons you're having problems, because when you're hopeless, obviously you're not going to try very hard. Tommy, did you want to say something there?
No, you. Thank you for checking in on me, Michael. But no, I'm very happy with the progress of this one. Please carry on.
Okay. Now, thank you. Sometimes we demonstrate the 3-minute exercise, A, B, C, D, E, F. Some people call it the ABC exercises, or Albert Ellis called it rational self-help form. But today we'll dispense with that and we'll just try to discuss this with you. All right, now what is the evidence, Shazia, that because you prefer to, therefore you absolutely have to do what you prefer to, in other words, lose weight? Where is that in the Constitution, in the Bible, or etched in stone anywhere, that Anne absolutely must lose weight?
It's not. I don't have an absolutely must.
You do have one, that's the problem, but there is no evidence for it.
There's no evidence, correct.
Yeah, and it doesn't exist in reality. Unfortunately, it exists in your brain because that's the way your brain works, and then you reinforce it.
Right.
And let's suppose I played the devil's advocate and I said, you must lose weight. And I'll give you a lot of reasons for that, because you'd be healthier, you'd look better, you'd feel better physically and psychologically. You'd be more self-disciplined, which is a good thing. So I say you must lose weight. And you just said there's no evidence for that. So prove me wrong.
Well, no, so I'm having, that's what I'm having difficulty with. Like, I try to do the exercises on my own, but then like when I come to the like there's no evidence, like there's the evidence for me is the health stuff, because I'm pre-diabetic. So that part is like when it says like, oh, there's no evidence, like I know there's no like the written, I mean, there's not, it's not in like, the Bible or whatever, but it's like that part is hard for me to figure out. Like there's no absolute evidence that like I should be this way, like, so I'm having difficulty like sorting that one.
Okay, very good. Good question. So you're saying that it's difficult for you to see that there's no evidence for I must lose weight and I must be healthier. So that means you can present some evidence. So what's the evidence that you have to lose weight, even though we agree there are 50 reasons why it would be preferable?
So okay, so I guess the like what I'm having difficulty with is like, so then there is no must, but there is a preference, right? So it's like,
Right.
okay, so the evidence for a must, I don't have any.
Right. Right. Okay, very good. So there's no evidence for the must. Yeah, Tommy?
Oh, even to get perfectly dark about it, I mean, you mentioned you're pre-diabetic, and one of the reasons you want to get healthier and lose weight is so that you don't have issues with diabetes in the future, which could lead to further health complications, pain, suffering, and, to put it darkly, and possibly even premature death. But even if we go into that dark alleyway right there in our thinking, is there even a must there? Like, I must not die. I must not have pain in my life. I must not experience.
Okay, that makes sense.
So what's the answer to Tommy's question?
There is no
And
must. Yeah.
right, why not? Okay, let's go back to the devil. We'll bring the devil back in here. I say you must lose weight. Your health depends on it. I listed all these other advantages. You don't want to die early, etc., and deprive your family of a wonderful mother and wife. So I say you must lose weight. This would be bad news if that's happened. No?
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? Did I make my case?
I mean, those are all preferences for me to like live long and all those things, but then like it doesn't feel like it still doesn't feel like a like there's evidence that it's like it has to be that way.
Okay, very good, very good. So they are preferences, but preferences don't equal musts. Musts are fictitious, and they just lead to bad results, like feeling hopeless. Uh,
Yes.
so, so your job is to reach that conclusion. It's not a must. It's just a strong preference. And because it's a strong preference, that means there are disadvantages if I don't lose weight.
Correct.
Therefore, I'm determined to try to avoid those disadvantages and do what I can to lose weight. And if I try one thing experimentally for a month and it doesn't work, then I'll try another thing and another thing and another thing, but I refuse to give up. And
Correct.
if I lose some weight and then have a setback and I gain it back, that means you failed so far, but it doesn't mean you're fated to fail in the future. You could always change your thinking and change your behavior.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Tommy, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, briefly, and you mentioned it, Michael. So let's say we are now determined to eat healthier or engage in the more practical solutions when it comes to losing weight. Um, one of the pitfalls there is when we fail at doing those things that we're determined to do, we globalize the failure and say, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. What a schlub I am, so on and so forth. So that is something, another dangerous line of thinking we can be aware of and try to avoid.
Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Oh, good. Very good. So let's give you a homework assignment. What would be a good thing that you can do as homework to reinforce these lessons?
To do the 3-minute exercises.
Write out the 3-minute exercises, the A, B,
Yeah.
C, D, F,
Yes.
daily.
Okay.
Yeah. And how many times daily? Once a day, twice a day, 500 times a day?
I'm going to start off with once a day.
Okay. By the way, if you did 500 times a day, you'd be cured in a week. you might lose your family and your job, but you'd be cured of this.
You won't even have time to eat. I mean, geez.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. No time to eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have
Yeah,
a
Tommy.
So, and when, let's say we get through this portion of our thinking and that you are determined, right?
Okay.
One of the things I see, and this is true with myself, is that when we're actually engaging in the practical solution, it starts to become hard and we feel like we want to give up or anything like that. Have you ever experienced that part?
Yes.
Yeah. Go, elaborate on that for me.
So, like a month ago, I started like my goal was to be like, okay, I'm gonna walk 10,000 steps 4 times a week, and it was going great. But then I was in so much physical pain afterwards. It was just hard to like keep going, and so I ended up injuring my foot, and so then it just set me back. So I'm a nurse by profession, so I have many like back injuries and like neck injuries and like from lifting patients on a daily basis that like it just physically makes it really hard for me to like be physically active on a consistent basis without feeling like the pain. So that's been a huge struggle for me.
Okay. Practically speaking, does the pain mean, and you'll know better than me at being a nurse, does the pain mean you shouldn't engage in those activities? And should it meaning it would be unhealthy to engage in those activities? Or does it mean it's just pain that we can work through, but it won't end in lasting damage?
It can be both. So it can be pain. At first I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna push through the pain, but then I ended up injuring my foot.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it's I don't know. I feel like it's a catch-22. Like it's definitely a little bit of both for sure.
Yeah. I would guess that some rehab would be in order before you start walking again. And then when
Hmm.
you start walking, get into it very, very gradually. Uh,
Okay.
but that's a different YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I like about this discussion right here when it comes to the exercise itself is that we didn't really get into kind of a must or a should or something that we would use the pure REBT for. We discovered a practical problem instead. So for folks listening at home, uh, what we demonstrated there is that when we kind of did a problem separation technique without even saying that, and discovered there may not have been a must there, but there is certainly a practical problem making it a little bit harder for Anne. And it could be for you as well. So we need to look at different practical problems. So anyway, Michael, I've rambled again.
Yeah. Okay. So any questions about what we've discussed so far, Anne?
No.
Okay. Now, according to my calculations, Tommy, we have a little more time and we could briefly address another issue. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there was another issue you wanted to discuss. So we'll be brief. So why don't you start and tell us what that issue is?
The other issue is that I'm having a hard time getting my husband to um, carry out daily tasks. So his two children are visiting, and it's just been very difficult for all of us to manage their care because they're very young, and so they require a lot of attention. And so it just feels like I'm stuck with all the chores, and he's busy with work, and the time that he does have that's free, it goes into spending time with the kids, but I'm still stuck with the chores. So and it's driving me crazy. So I don't know how to handle that right now.
Okay. Well, the first step is to decide on a specific goal. A general goal is that uh, your husband helps more with the housework, could we call it?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's your
So
general goal.
one specific thing is like doing the dishes. The dishes
Okay.
will just sit there, and then I'll end up doing them because he hasn't gotten around to them.
I see. I see. And you feel that he could realistically take some time away from whatever else he's doing and do the dishes.
Yes.
Okay. And I assume you've asked him to do the dishes?
Correct.
Okay. So you have a practical problem. Do you have any musts about that?
Yes, I feel like he must help out and do the dishes so that I'm not, stuck doing everything.
Okay. And as we saw, when you have musts and shoulds, it tends to make it much more difficult to implement practical solutions. So thing to do is to ask yourself, although I prefer that he chip in, help with the dishes, what is the evidence he absolutely must do what I prefer?
Right. So there's no evidence that he must do them.
Right,
I do, yeah, I just have a high preference that he
right,
does.
right. So your job is to disabuse yourself of the must, and it's usually not going to happen overnight. It means practice, 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 working on questioning, challenging, and contradicting your must. And you can do it in your head and also do it on paper as you're going to do the other 3-minute exercise. So, so would you have time to do 2 a day? While
Yes, I
I'm
can do 2 a day for sure.
okay. Well, we're getting close to 500, so that's good. And then the other problem, the other issue is a practical problem. How could you be more effective in motivating him to do the dishes? So you said you've asked him. How
Yeah.
have you asked him? What have you said to him?
I mean, I start off by, being like, I was like, hey, babe, can you please like do the dishes? And then he'll be like, yeah, I'll get to them. And then he won't get to them. And then like, I'll ask again. And then, it's still an issue. And then I'll just be passive aggressive. And then I'll just do them myself. And then,
Okay.
yeah.
So one of the things you can do is Don't let him get off the hook when he says, yeah, I'll do them. Say, okay, that's great. That's wonderful. I really appreciate your helping out. So a lot of positive feedback. And when will you do them?
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried that one?
Yeah, and he'll give me like a vague answer. It's like, oh, after I'm done with so and so, but then it's not a specific time, you know.
Okay.
So
So then it's up to you. We'll say, how about at 9 p.m. tonight, or
okay,
before you go to bed tonight? Have you
okay,
tried something specific?
okay. No, not that specific. No.
Okay. So also, when you suggest something like do the dishes by 9 p.m. tonight, it's important to add, how do you feel about that?
Okay.
Because he might hear you, but not necessarily buy in. So you want to engage
Okay.
him when you make a preference and ask him, what do you think? How do you feel? And then when he comes up with objections, like, I'll do them, it's okay, I'll do them later, then you can respond to that and say, well, how about 9 p.m. or how about before bed or something like that.
Okay.
How does that sound?
That sounds great. I'll try that.
Okay, very good. Tommy, any last words
I just like
for
where Ann already
Anna?
pointed out that she would become more passive aggressive and things like that. And so her,
Yeah.
hey, but what I liked about is that the emotional problem that we had and that demanding that he must do something. And folks, usually when we have a demand of other people, it usually manifests in some form of anger or some form of aggression. He must do this or else he's a terrible person, deserves to be punished, essentially.
Mm,
And when we have that sort of thinking in mind, when we try to
mm,
the practical solution, we tend to sabotage it with our own anger. And Michael gave a great practical solution along with the 3-minute exercise at the very beginning. So again, if you have a little bit of anger when you're trying to engage in that practical solution that Michael, and I'm not talking specifically to you, Anna, I'm just talking to everybody here. Look for the must on other people, the demand on other people. So anyway, that's my last word. And thank you for coming on.
thank you
Yeah,
for having
thanks
me.
very much, Anne. And if you enjoyed the video, please comment below and give us a like. Please volunteer. Anne survived. She's still alive and kicking. So, and let us know if you have questions, objections. But if you're would like to discuss an issue related to REBT or related to a personal problem, we'd love to speak with you on the video. And also, if you're a therapist and you're having difficulties with clients, we're happy to supervise you on a video. Now, also, we'd like you to support us on Patreon if you think it's worthwhile. Subscribe to the REBT Advocates to stay on the rational side of life.